There's a strange thing that happens when someone is kind to you without wanting anything in return. Your chest tightens, your throat closes, you feel something rising inside you that you can't quite name. It's not happiness, it's not relief, it's something closer to panic. Because somewhere deep inside, a part of you that never grew up is screaming. That part doesn't trust softness. That part learned a long time ago that love comes with conditions. And now, even when someone offers you tenderness without strings attached, you can't help but wait for the other shoe to drop. Maybe you're in a relationship with someone who's patient, who's gentle, who never raises their voice. They hold you when you cry. They ask how your day was and actually listen. They remember the small things. They don't punish you with silence when you make mistakes. And yet, instead of melting into that safety, you find yourself pulling away. You pick fights over nothing. You test their patience. You search for proof that they'll leave, that they'll hurt you, that they're just like everyone else who promised to stay but didn't. This is the psychology of the wounded inner child, the one who learned that softness was a trap, the one who survived by becoming hard, vigilant, self-sufficient. That child is still inside you, making decisions, pulling strings, protecting you from a danger that no longer exists. And until you understand why that child is screaming, you'll keep sabotaging the very love you've been searching for your entire life. Let me take you back to where it started. You're young, maybe 5 or 6. You're sitting on the floor of your room, crying. You don't remember why anymore. Maybe you fell. Maybe someone hurt your feelings. Maybe you just felt sad for no reason at all. But what you do remember is calling out for comfort and getting nothing back. Maybe your parent was too tired. Maybe they were dealing with their own pain. Maybe they told you to stop crying, to toughen up, to go to your room. Or maybe they didn't say anything at all. They just kept scrolling through their phone, watching TV, existing in the same house but miles away from your small aching heart. And in that moment, something shifted inside you. Your nervous system registered a message. When you're vulnerable, you're alone. When you need comfort, you're a burden. When you reach for softness, it disappears. So you stopped reaching. You learned to swallow your tears. You learned to smile when you were breaking. You learned that survival meant not needing anyone. And that lesson, learned in silence, in the absence of touch, in the space where love should have been, became the foundation of how you relate to love as an adult. Psychologists call this attachment wounding. It's what happens when a child's emotional needs are consistently unmet, not through dramatic abuse, but through quiet neglect. Through parents who are physically present but emotionally absent. Through caregivers who provided food and shelter, but not safety, not warmth, not the soft landing every child needs to learn that the world is a safe place to be vulnerable in. And the devastating thing about this kind of wound is that it's invisible. There are no bruises, no broken bones, just a quiet, gnawing emptiness that follows you into every relationship you'll ever have. What happens to a child who grows up without emotional safety is that they develop what's called a defended attachment style. They learn to protect themselves by not attaching at all, or by attaching in ways that keep them in control. They become the hyper-independent adult who says they don't need anyone. Or they become the anxious lover who clings desperately, terrified of abandonment but never truly believing they're worthy of staying. Or they swing between both, pushing people away and then panicking when they actually leave. This isn't a personality flaw, this is a survival adaptation. This is a child who learned that love is dangerous, and the adult they became still believes it. The cruelest part is that the people who need softness the most are the ones who trust it the least. You crave it, you dream about it. You fantasize about someone holding you without judgment, about resting your head on their chest and finally feeling safe. But when that moment actually comes, when someone offers you exactly what you've been longing for, something inside you recoils, your body tenses, your mind races, you start questioning their motives. You tell yourself they're being fake, that they want something, that no one is this nice without an agenda, because the child inside you knows something the adult you has forgotten. Softness in your world always came before disappointment. This is why you push good people away, why you test their love until it breaks, why you find flaws in their kindness and reasons to distrust their care. It's not because you're broken, it's because you're protecting that child who once believed in love and got hurt. That child who reached out and found no one there. That child who cried in the dark and learned that no one was coming. And now that child runs the show whenever someone gets too close. They pull the alarm, they raise the walls, they whisper in your ear that this is just another setup, another inevitable heartbreak, and you listen because that voice kept you alive once. But what saved you then is killing you now. Here's what attachment theory tells us. Children need 3 things to develop secure attachment. They need consistency, attunement, and responsiveness. Consistency means the caregiver is reliably present, not just physically, but emotionally. Attunement means the caregiver notices and reflects the child's emotions, helping them make sense of what they're feeling. Responsiveness means the caregiver meets the child's needs in a timely, caring way. When any of these are missing, the child's nervous system goes into survival mode, and survival mode doesn't care about connection, it cares about not dying, so the child learns to suppress their needs, to become small, to stop asking for what they'll never receive, and this is where it gets complex. Because not all neglect is obvious. Sometimes it looks like a parent who provided everything material but nothing emotional. Sometimes it looks like a household where everyone was so busy surviving their own pain that no one had space to hold yours. Sometimes it looks like a family where emotions were treated as inconveniences, where vulnerability was mocked, where softness was seen as weakness. And the child in that environment learns a devastating lesson. Your feelings don't matter, your needs are too much. Love is something you have to earn, and even then, it might be taken away. Fast forward to adulthood. You meet someone who's different. They're patient, they're kind, they don't play games, they don't punish you with silence or rage when you're not perfect. They offer you the kind of steady, unconditional care that your younger self would have given anything to receive. And instead of gratitude, you feel terror. Because your nervous system doesn't recognize this. It doesn't have a category for safe love. All it knows is that when people are nice, they eventually leave. When things feel good, they fall apart. When you let your guard down, you get hurt. So it does what it was trained to do. It prepares you for impact. This is called hypervigilance. It's when your nervous system is constantly scanning for threat, even in safe situations. And for people with attachment wounds, intimacy itself becomes the threat. Because intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability means opening the door to the very pain you've spent your whole life trying to avoid. So you find ways to keep people at arm's length. You get busy, you become distant, you pick fights, you focus on their flaws. You convince yourself they're not right for you, not because they're actually wrong, but because they're getting too close. And closeness feels like danger, because the last time you were that close to someone, that open, that soft, you got abandoned. And here's the terrible irony. The more someone loves you the way you needed to be loved as a child, the more your inner child panics. Because that child doesn't trust it. That child has been waiting for the betrayal, the disappointment, the moment when the mask slips and the real person underneath turns cold. So you sabotage. Not consciously, not intentionally, but you do it anyway. You push them until they prove you right, until they get tired and leave, and then you say, "See, I knew it. Everyone leaves. I knew I couldn't trust them." But the truth is you couldn't trust yourself to receive their love, because receiving love means believing you deserve it. And if you're still carrying the wounds of a child who was taught they didn't, that belief feels impossible. Neuroscience backs this up. Studies show that people with insecure attachment have different neural responses to affection. When someone shows them kindness, the parts of their brain associated with reward don't light up the way they should. Instead, the threat detection systems activate. The amygdala, which processes fear, goes into overdrive. The prefrontal cortex, which helps regulate emotion, struggles to keep up. So instead of feeling soothed by love, they feel overwhelmed by it. Their body is literally treating affection as a danger signal, and that's not a choice, that's trauma. That's the nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do to keep you safe in an environment that no longer exists. But here's what you need to understand. That child inside you isn't trying to ruin your life, they're trying to save it. They learned a long time ago that hoping for love, trusting in softness, believing that someone would stay, only led to pain, so they built walls. They created rules. They developed strategies to ensure you'd never be that vulnerable again, and those strategies worked. They got you through childhood, they protected you from disappointment, they helped you survive in a world that didn't feel safe. But the problem is, you're not in that world anymore, and the strategies that once saved you are now the very things keeping you from the connection you need to heal. This is the psychology of reenactment. Unconsciously, we recreate the emotional dynamics of our childhood in our adult relationships. Not because we want to suffer, but because familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar love. If you grew up feeling unseen, you'll be drawn to people who don't see you. If you grew up feeling unworthy, you'll tolerate treatment that confirms it. And if you grew up learning that softness is temporary, you'll either avoid it entirely or destroy it before it has the chance to destroy you. Because at least if you're the one who ends it, you're in control. At least if you push them away first, you don't have to relive the agony of being left behind. But let me tell you something that might hurt to hear. The person you're with right now, the one who's patient and kind, the one who keeps showing up even when you push them away, they're not your parent. They're not the person who failed you when you were small. They don't deserve to be punished for wounds they didn't cause. And the truth is, no amount of testing their love will ever heal the part of you that wasn't loved enough as a child. Because that wound can't be healed by someone else. It can only be healed by you. By the adult you, going back to comfort that child, to tell them what no one else ever did. You're safe now. You're allowed to need. You're worthy of softness, and love doesn't have to hurt. This is where the real work begins, not in finding the perfect partner who will never trigger you, but in learning to recognize when your inner child is in the driver's seat. When you feel that familiar panic rising, when softness feels like a trap, when you start looking for reasons to leave or reasons to fight, that's the moment to pause, to take a breath, to ask yourself, is this person actually hurting me? Or am I reacting to a pain that's older than this relationship? Am I seeing them clearly? Or am I seeing through the lens of a child who learned that love always ends in disappointment? This isn't easy. It goes against every instinct that kept you safe. Because that inner child doesn't want you to soften. They want you to stay hard, stay guarded, stay ready to run. They're terrified that if you let someone in, if you trust this person, if you allow yourself to believe that maybe this time it's different, you'll get hurt again, and they can't survive another heartbreak. But here's the truth. You're not that child anymore. You're an adult with resources, with options, with the ability to leave if someone truly harms you. And the people who love you now, the ones who've earned your trust through consistent action, they're not the people who failed you then. They're different, and you're allowed to let them be. One of the most powerful things you can do is start reparenting yourself. That means giving yourself the softness you never received. It means noticing when you're being harsh with yourself, when you're demanding perfection, when you're punishing yourself for having needs. And instead of continuing that pattern, you pause. You place a hand on your heart. You say the words that child needed to hear. I see you. I'm here. You're not too much. You're not a burden. You're allowed to need comfort. You're allowed to be soft. You're allowed to be loved. And at first, it will feel fake. It will feel silly. But over time, your nervous system will start to believe it. Because repetition rewires the brain, and every time you offer yourself compassion instead of criticism, you're teaching that inner child that softness isn't a trap. It's a homecoming. Another crucial piece is learning to tolerate positive emotion. For people with attachment wounds, joy can feel more dangerous than sadness, because sadness is familiar. Sadness you know how to handle. But happiness feels unstable. It feels like something that will be taken away. So when good things happen, when someone loves you well, when you feel genuinely content, your nervous system panics. It tells you not to get too comfortable. It reminds you that the other shoe will drop, and so you either numb out, unable to fully feel the joy, or you sabotage it, ending it yourself before life does it for you. But healing means learning to stay in those moments, to breathe through the discomfort, to let yourself feel happy without immediately bracing for disaster, to trust that good things can last, and even if they don't, you'll survive the loss because you're not that helpless child anymore. There's also a difference between discernment and distrust. Discernment says, this person's actions don't match their words, and I'm choosing to protect myself. Distrust says, this person is being kind, but I'm going to assume they're lying because everyone else did. Discernment is wisdom. Distrust is trauma. And learning to tell the difference is how you stop punishing safe people for the crimes of those who hurt you. It means looking at patterns over time. It means giving people the chance to prove themselves without demanding they're perfect. It means understanding that everyone will disappoint you sometimes, but that doesn't mean they're unsafe. It just means they're human. But let's be honest, some of you reading this are in relationships with people who actually aren't safe, people who are inconsistent, who manipulate, who use your trauma against you. And if that's the case, your inner child isn't wrong to be afraid. They're trying to protect you from real harm. And in that case, the healthiest thing you can do is leave. Not everyone deserves access to your softness. Not everyone has earned the right to your vulnerability. And part of healing is learning to recognize the difference between someone who's safe but triggering and someone who's actually dangerous. One requires you to soften, the other requires you to run. And knowing which is the difference between healing and re-traumatizing yourself. Here's something else that's important. Healing doesn't mean you'll never be triggered again. It doesn't mean you'll suddenly trust easily or that softness will always feel safe. Trauma changes the brain, and even with years of work, certain things will still activate that inner child. A tone of voice, a certain kind of silence, a moment of closeness that feels too intense. And when that happens, you'll feel that familiar panic, the urge to run, the need to create distance. And that's okay. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to notice it, to name it, to say, I'm feeling scared right now, and it's not because of you. It's because of something old. Can you just hold me while I breathe through this? That kind of honesty, that kind of vulnerability, is how you begin to rewire those old patterns, because you're no longer handling it alone. You're letting someone in, and every time you do that, every time you let someone see your fear and they stay, you're teaching that inner child a new lesson. Love doesn't always end. Softness isn't always a trap. Some people really do stay, and maybe that's the hardest part. Learning to stay too. Learning not to run when things get real. Learning to sit in the discomfort of being seen, of being loved, of being soft. Because for so long, running was survival. Hardness was safety. And now you're being asked to do the opposite. To be vulnerable. To be open. To let someone close enough to hurt you and to trust that they won't. That goes against everything that kept you alive, but it's the only way to truly live. Because a life where you never let anyone in, where you never let yourself need, where you never allow softness, isn't safety. It's isolation. It's the prison your inner child built to keep you from being hurt again. And yes, it works. You won't get hurt. But you also won't be loved. Not really. Not in the way you deserve. So what does healing look like? It looks like catching yourself mid-push. It looks like noticing when you're searching for flaws in someone who's been nothing but kind. It looks like saying, I'm scared, instead of, I'm fine. It looks like letting yourself cry in front of someone without apologizing. It looks like asking for what you need, even though every part of you is bracing for rejection. It looks like staying when your instinct is to run. It looks like trusting, just a little bit more than feels comfortable. And it looks like being patient with yourself when you fail at all of this. Because you will fail. You'll push them away, you'll test them, you'll hurt them without meaning to. And that's part of the process. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is progress. And every time you choose vulnerability over distance, you're making progress. Every time you let someone love you without sabotaging it, you're healing. Even if it only lasts 5 minutes before the fear comes back. Even if it only happens once a month, it still counts. You're still changing. And that matters. There's a concept in psychology called earned secure attachment. It means that even if you didn't grow up with secure attachment, you can develop it later through self-awareness, therapy, and relationships with people who are consistently safe. You're not doomed to repeat your childhood. You're not broken beyond repair. You can learn to trust softness. You can learn to receive love. You can learn to believe that you're worthy of care without having to earn it, without having to be perfect, without having to prove your value every single day. But it requires you to do something terrifying. It requires you to let that inner child rest, to tell them, I've got this now. You don't have to protect me anymore. You can be small, you can be soft, you can need, and I'll take care of us. I won't let anyone hurt you the way you were hurt before, but I also won't let your fear keep me from the love I deserve. And maybe that sounds impossible. Maybe it sounds like something other people can do, but not you. Maybe you've been alone for so long, or hurt so many times, that the idea of trusting anyone feels laughable. And if that's where you are, I understand. I'm not here to tell you it's easy. I'm not here to promise that if you just try hard enough, everything will work out. Because sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you open up and the person still leaves. Sometimes you choose vulnerability and it still ends in heartbreak. But here's the difference. When you've done the work, when you've learned to separate the past from the present, when you've stopped letting your inner child make all your decisions, that heartbreak doesn't destroy you. It hurts. God, it hurts. But it doesn't confirm your worst beliefs about yourself. It doesn't prove that you were right to never trust. It just means that person wasn't the right one, and you're strong enough to survive that. Because you're not that child anymore. You've survived worse, and you'll survive this too. But maybe, just maybe, this time will be different. Maybe the person you're with now, the one who's been patient, the one who's seen your walls and chosen to stay anyway, maybe they're the one who'll prove your inner child wrong. Maybe they'll show you that softness isn't a trap, that love doesn't always end, that you're allowed to need without being abandoned, and maybe, slowly, in tiny increments that feel like nothing but add up to everything, you'll start to let them in, you'll start to trust. Not because you're suddenly healed, not because you're not afraid anymore, but because you're tired of being alone, and you're willing to risk the pain of heartbreak for the possibility of real connection. And that, right there, is the bravest thing you'll ever do. Because healing isn't about becoming fearless, it's about being afraid and doing it anyway. It's about letting someone see the parts of you that you've spent your whole life hiding. The needy parts, the broken parts, the parts that still cry in the dark and wonder if anyone will come. And when they do come, when they hold you and tell you you're safe, you let yourself believe it. Just for a moment. And then another moment. And then another. Until one day, you realize you're not flinching anymore. You're not waiting for them to leave. You're not testing their love. You're just living in it. Breathing it in. Letting it fill the empty spaces that have been hollow for so long. And it feels strange. It feels vulnerable. It feels terrifying and beautiful all at once. But it doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like home. And maybe that's all your inner child ever wanted. Not perfection, not certainty. Just someone who stays. Someone who sees the scared, small version of you and loves them anyway. Someone who proves, over and over, that softness isn't something to fear. It's something to sink into. Something to trust. Something to finally let yourself have. So if you're someone who can't trust softness in love, know this. It's not your fault. You're not broken. You're not too damaged. You're just protecting a part of yourself that no one else protected. And that makes sense. But you're also allowed to stop. You're allowed to lay down that armor. You're allowed to let someone in. And you're allowed to believe that maybe, just maybe, you deserve to be loved in the soft, steady, unconditional way you should have been loved from the beginning. You do. You always did. And the sooner you believe that, the sooner you can stop running from the very thing your heart has been searching for all along. Love. Real love. The kind that doesn't ask you to be perfect. The kind that doesn't punish you for having needs. The kind that stays even when you're afraid. Especially when you're afraid. Because that's when you need it most. And that's exactly when it should be there. Not as a trap, not as a test, but as a truth. A quiet, undeniable truth. You're worthy of softness. You always were. And it's time you let yourself feel it. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing you didn't check your partner's face for signs of anger before speaking. You didn't rehearse your words to avoid conflict. You didn't brace yourself for disappointment. You just existed. Soft, open, unguarded, and nothing bad happened. That moment will feel surreal. It might even scare you more than the fear itself did, because it means something is changing, the walls are coming down, and while that's what you've always wanted, it's also what you've always feared, because walls keep pain out, but they also keep love out. And when they start to crumble, you're exposed, vulnerable, and that feels like standing naked in a storm, but it also feels like freedom. Like you're finally allowed to be human, messy, imperfect, needy, soft, and still loved, still held, still chosen. This is what therapists call integration. It's when the wounded parts of you start to trust the adult parts. When your inner child stops screaming every time someone gets close. When your body begins to recognize safety as safety, not as the calm before the storm. And it happens slowly. So slowly you might not notice it at first. But one day you'll be lying next to someone you love, and they'll reach for your hand and you won't pull away, you won't tense, you won't question their motives, you'll just hold their hand back. And in that simple moment you'll realize how far you've come. Because a year ago even that would have felt like too much. But now it feels like exactly what it is. Comfort, connection, love, and you're allowing yourself to have it. But let's be real, there will still be hard days, days when the fear comes back so strong you can barely breathe, days when you look at the person who loves you and feel nothing but panic, days when you want to run so badly it takes everything in you to stay. And on those days, you'll doubt everything. You'll think you're not healing, you'll think you're still broken, you'll think maybe you're just not meant for this kind of love. But that's the trauma talking. That's the inner child trying to pull you back into the familiar darkness because the light is too bright and it hurts their eyes. And on those days, you have to be gentle with yourself. You have to remind yourself that healing isn't linear, that setbacks don't erase progress, that feeling afraid doesn't mean you're failing, it just means you're human. And being human is messy, it's complicated, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But you're still moving, you're still trying, and that's what matters. One thing that helps is learning your triggers, really learning them, not just knowing that you get scared when someone is nice to you, but understanding why. What is it about kindness that feels dangerous? Is it the vulnerability of needing someone? Is it the fear that if you depend on them they'll leave? Is it the belief that you don't deserve softness, so anyone offering it must have an agenda? When you can name the fear, you can start to separate it from reality. You can say, this person is being kind, and my trauma is telling me it's a trap, but I'm going to sit with this discomfort and see what happens. I'm going to let them be kind and notice that I survive it, that nothing bad happens, that maybe they just love me, and that's allowed to be simple. Another thing that helps is finding safe people to practice with. Not just romantic partners, but friends, therapists, support groups, people who understand trauma, people who won't take it personally when you push them away, people who can hold space for your fear without trying to fix it. Because sometimes you don't need advice, you don't need to be told what to do, you just need someone to witness your pain and say, I see you, I'm not going anywhere, you're safe here. That kind of presence is healing in itself. It rewires your nervous system. It teaches you that vulnerability doesn't always lead to abandonment, that softness doesn't always lead to pain, that some people really will stay, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And here's something I want you to really hear. You're allowed to take your time, you're allowed to move at your own pace. You don't have to force yourself to trust before you're ready. You don't have to pretend you're healed when you're still hurting. You don't have to be further along than you are. Healing is not a race, it's not a performance. It's a deeply personal, often painful, always non-linear process. And wherever you are in that process is exactly where you're supposed to be. So if you're still guarded, if you're still pushing people away, if you're still unable to believe that anyone could love you without conditions, that's okay. You're not failing, you're just protecting yourself the only way you know how. And when you're ready, when it feels even a tiny bit safer, you'll start to let your guard down. But until then, be patient with yourself. Be kind to that part of you that's still afraid. They're not your enemy, they're trying to keep you safe. And one day, you'll be able to tell them, thank you, but I'm okay now. You can rest. There's a moment that happens in therapy, or in healing, or in relationships with people who truly see you, where something shifts. You're talking about your past, about the ways you were hurt, about the reasons you can't trust, and the person listening doesn't try to fix you. They don't tell you to just get over it. They don't minimize your pain or compare it to someone else's. They just sit with you in it. They let you feel it. And in that space, something softens, because you realize you're not alone anymore. You're not the only one holding this pain. Someone else is holding it with you, and that shared weight, that witness, is the beginning of healing. Because trauma happens in isolation, and healing happens in connection. Not in the connection where someone rescues you, but in the connection where someone sees you, all of you, the scared parts, the angry parts, the parts that push people away and they stay anyway. They don't fix you, they just love you. And that love, quiet and steady and unconditional, is what finally teaches your inner child that softness is safe. And maybe right now you're thinking, but what if I never find that? What if no one ever loves me like that? What if I'm too broken, too difficult, too much? And I hear you, I do. But here's the truth. The love you're looking for starts with you. It starts with you being the person who sees your inner child, who holds them, who tells them they're safe. Because if you're waiting for someone else to heal you, you'll be waiting forever. Not because no one will ever love you, but because no one can heal a wound they didn't cause. Only you can do that. Only you can go back to that child and give them what they needed. Only you can be the parent you never had. And when you do that, when you start showing up for yourself with the same patience and kindness you're searching for in others, something magical happens. You stop needing external validation to feel whole. You stop looking for someone to complete you, and you start attracting people who complement you. People who are whole too. People who don't need to fix you or save you. People who just want to walk beside you. And that kind of love, the kind that's built on two whole people choosing each other, not needing each other, that's the love that lasts. That's the love that heals. So here's what I want you to do. Right now, wherever you are, place your hand over your heart. Feel it beating. That heartbeat is proof that you survived. Proof that despite everything, despite the neglect, the abandonment, the pain, you're still here. And that matters. You matter. And the fact that you're reading this, that you're trying to understand yourself, that you're doing the work to heal, that's proof that you haven't given up. That some part of you still believes love is possible. And that part, small as it might feel, is stronger than all the fear. Because hope is the most rebellious thing you can hold on to when the world taught you to expect disappointment. And you're still holding it. Maybe barely, maybe by a thread. But you're holding it, and that's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything. And one day you'll meet someone who feels like home. Not because they're perfect, not because they never trigger you, but because when they do, they don't run. They stay. They apologize when they hurt you. They hold you when you're scared. They remind you gently, patiently that they're not going anywhere. And slowly, so slowly you almost don't notice, you'll start to believe them. You'll start to trust that softness isn't a trap, that love doesn't always end, that you're worthy of care not because you earned it, but because you exist. And in that belief, in that trust, you'll finally feel what your inner child has been searching for all along. Safety. Real safety. The kind that doesn't come from walls or distance or control. The kind that comes from being seen, being loved, and being chosen. Not despite your wounds, but with them. Because someone finally looked at all of you, the scared parts, the broken parts, the parts that push people away, and they said, I'm staying, I see you, and I'm not going anywhere. And you believed them. And that belief, fragile and new and terrifying, is the beginning of everything. Because healing isn't about never being afraid again. It's about being afraid and letting someone hold you through it. It's about trusting that love can be soft and still be real, that people can be kind and still be honest, that you can be vulnerable and still be safe. And maybe you're not there yet. Maybe you're still building those walls, still pushing people away, still convinced that softness is a lie. And that's okay. You'll get there, when you're ready, when it feels even a little bit safer, when you meet someone who's patient enough to wait, or when you finally become that person for yourself. Because the love you're searching for, the love that heals, the love that stays, it's already inside you. It always has been. You just have to let it out. You just have to let yourself be soft. Just once. Just for a moment. And see what happens, and I promise you, nothing bad will happen. You'll just feel. And that feeling, terrifying as it is the beginning of being alive again. Really alive. Not just surviving, but living. Softly, openly, fully. And that's what you deserve. That's what you've always deserved, and it's time you let yourself have it. So if you're reading this and you recognize yourself in these words, if you're someone who can't trust softness, who flinches when people are kind, who pushes love away before it can leave, I see you. And I want you to know something. You're not broken. You're not too much. You're not beyond healing. You're just scared, and that makes sense. But you don't have to stay scared forever. You can heal. You can learn to trust. You can let someone in, and you can be loved, really loved, in the way you should have been from the very beginning. It won't be easy. It'll be messy and uncomfortable, and you'll want to run 1,000 times. But if you stay, if you keep trying, if you keep choosing vulnerability over distance, one day you'll wake up and realize you're not afraid anymore. You're not waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're just here, present, soft, loved. And that feeling, that quiet, steady, undeniable feeling of finally being safe will be worth every moment of fear it took to get there. I promise. You're worth it. You always were. And it's time you let yourself believe it.